those. All right, welcome to the December National Heritage Area Best Practices Call. My name is Heather Wickens, and I work for the Abraham Lincoln National Heritage Area, but I also founded and coordinated this call. So today we're doing something a little different, and we have done this before, but it's more of an open conversation format. So we have a lot of newer heritage areas that have come on in the last couple of years, and then we have people who've been around for a long time. And as with almost every heritage area, we all do things similarly, but very different as well. So today's conversation topic is kind of a follow-up to last week's call for those of you who tuned in to the training on how to do the annual report for the National Park Service, but also because this fall we have done a whole series on partners. And so for the last call for December, we decided we were going to do a call on discussing formal and informal partners and how different heritage areas deal with that in their own heritage area, and then how you report it on the National Heritage Area forms for the annual report. So it's kind of connected, but kind of different. But we've been having a whole series of partnership calls, and we're going to actually have at least one more in 2022 on partners as well. So without any further ado, would anybody and I would be happy to, but would anybody like to kick off the conversation and to start this off, because not everybody knows everybody. When you introduce yourself, if you say what heritage area, like your name and what heritage area you're representing, that would be very helpful for people who may not know who you are and or what heritage area you work for. And then kind of talk about how your heritage area does the whole formal and informal partner thing. So do I have any volunteers to start this conversation? Yes, no, yes, no.
You want me to go first?
Dan raised his hand. So Dan's going to start.
Hi, I'm Dan Jeanson. I'm from the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area. And basically we go by a simple rule. If we sign a contract with an organization, we count them as a formal partner, and otherwise we count them as an informal partner. So all of our grantees, organizations that we sign cooperative agreements with, we count them as formal partners, and anything else we count as an informal. So ours is, if there's a signed agreement between us, that's what we count as the boundary line.
Dan, can you maybe give an example of an informal partner that you have had in the past year or two?
Yeah, so we run an event series in September called the Hudson River Valley Ramble, and those partners we count as informal. The events are held by the heritage sites themselves, and we just organize it into a cohesive marketing campaign on their behalf. And so they run the events. We have a website that they register the events at, but they don't sign anything with us, and there's nothing forcing them to run the events. And a lot of them, did get canceled because of COVID, but we counted those partners as informal.
All right. Would anybody else like to have any? Okay. First, does anybody have any, besides Liz, any follow-up questions for Dan? And if not, would somebody else like to share?
Hi, Brian Yapp from the Motor Cities National Heritage Area in Southeast Michigan. And similar to Dan, I think we adopt the strategy of sign agreements, sort of count on our report as formal partners. And informal partners really ends up being everybody else. And we end up doing a lot of sort of in-kind work and supportive work and other umbrella type organizations like ours. Like I would consider an in-kind partner of ours the Michigan Historic Preservation Network or the Michigan Museums Association. So they are not signed partners, and they're not grant recipients, they're not a site, but they are an organization similar to us who sort of have this mission of helping other nonprofits under a broad umbrella. So we work together to maybe present on each other's best practice calls or share resources. So I would say informal like that. Also, like Dan said, the event partners, because they don't necessarily fit into that niche either, where they're not a site or a program, but the events are a huge part of our automotive heritage and culture here. And so a major event like the Woodward Dream Cruise or the North American International Auto Show, we would consider an informal partner, because when the time comes from the event, they're happy to tout that they're part of the National Heritage Area. They're happy to give us display space and help us promote the heritage area, but there's no sort of formal agreement between us for that.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else like to share?
I can share something. Lois Burns, Last Green Valley National Heritage Corridor, where Eastern Connecticut, South Central Massachusetts. For formal partners, we definitely count partners where we have written agreements, meaning grants that we give out. We also have a couple of large landscape scale projects where we're working with, for example, on a forestry project with 19 different partners. And whether we have contracts with them or they're providing significant contributions in the language of that particular project, not match. But everybody's contributing something to a project that we're leading. And so we count them as all formal partners. And we do have something in writing with all of them. We also, in our area, we are kind of the umbrella organization for lots of programs like water quality monitoring. We provide equipment, training, meeting space for all the team leaders to come together. We also provide the technical quality assurance project plans, those documents of documenting methodology that allows the data to be submitted to state environmental organizations. And so we count all of our water quality monitoring partners as formal partners because we do meet multiple times. Again, we provide the training, some equipment, and this kind of overview. We do also count some of the program partners as formal partners. We do a big program. Dan, Brian, you just mentioned events. We do a program called Walktober every fall, and we've been doing it for more than 30 years. It actually preceded the Heritage Corridor. And other groups, our partners run events, but we do all the publicity, you know, and we try to make it a big regional thing, but we also provide leader training. We provide t-shirts, we provide signs. There's a lot of back and forth between us. And the fact that we've been doing this for 30 years with a lot of the same partners, because of that deeper relationship that spans many, many, many years, we tend to count those as formal partners. Other groups that are one-off that might provide in-kind contributions to us one year, but we never see again, you know, those would be informal partners. If they're shorter term, less formal than even our Walktober program. So we do count some of the program partners as formal partners. And I know we have high numbers. You asked us about them, Katie and Liz. But we don't have National Park Service sites within the Heritage Corridor. And I think from day one, everything we do is collaborative. You know, we don't do anything on our own. It's always with multiple partners. And honestly, we've always struggled with what's formal, what's informal, but we've sort of tried to come up with the best split that we can based on things in writing, as well as kind of the depth of the relationship, you know, and that's where we make the split.
Thanks for sharing, Lois. Would someone else like to share? Oh, Candy.
Well, Heather, I just wanted to.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. I missed a group of people that we count as formal partners. We are a New York State agency, and the way that we're set up is we have a board of directors, and it's a mixture of like representatives of our state legislature and members of other state agencies that are doing similar work to us. And so we count all of the members of the board as formal partners, even though they're volunteer and they don't have any formal agreements, but we consider them formal partners because they're a member of our governing board.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Candy, your hand was up next.
Hi, I'm Candy Walt Street, the Director of Partnerships for Silos and Smokestacks National Heritage Area in Iowa. I spoke with you guys a few weeks ago about our partnership program, but when we count for the annual report, we document our official partner sites and emerging sites that we have agreements. Like what the others have said, they're active agreements. Now, the difference is, and I think I mentioned it during my program, but I want, for any new heritage areas, I think it's an important thing to note that in our management plan, it calls out for a structure of partner sites to be developed in the early days and when we first established our management plan. But then it also, then in our update, we formalize that process in our management plan. And so those are what make up our formal partnerships. And then we have many different informal partners and stakeholders, similar to the other groups that we name. But the other group that we do sometimes count as a formal partner is if we have host communities for a traveling exhibit that we have had quite a bit of success with called It Takes an Iowan. So then again, that's an agreement with them to host that. And so we count that as a formal partnership. Other than that, I'll let it go for now.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and share. So I'm Heather Wickens, work for the Abraham Lincoln National Heritage Area. And we are very similar to what other people have said. Formal partners for us have to have some sort of signed agreement, whether it's a cooperative agreement or an MOU between, in our case, our communities instead of sites, with our organization. Informal partners, and we have a lot of informal partners, are people we work with, but we don't actually have signed agreements. And that can be everything from sharing resources to letting us host workshops, to people who, to sites that are very Lincoln, or that we work with the sites as part of the community. But it may not be the specific organization that we have a signed agreement with, or they're on a committee but it represents a completely different organization. So that's kind of how we determine our informal and formal partners. We have a lot more informal partners than we have actually formal partners in our particular case, because for me, it's a very clear break in how we do it. If we have a written agreement, that's very much for us a formal partnership. But we like things black and white. So, we have a lot of informal partners that are sites or organizations that we work with or collaborate with, and things like that. So, all right, who else would like to share? This has been really good so far. Who else would like to share? Ooh, I think I saw somebody. Amanda would like to share, or your hand's raised.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Amanda Sassy. I'm with the Kenai Mountains Turnagain Arm National Heritage Area in Alaska, and we have a pretty strong grant program. That's our biggest thing, and we of course do all of our contracted for formal partners, but then we also our grantees also list their formal and informal partners, and we'll list them because we figure we've granted the money to make the project happen, so they're partnering kind of with us too. We have a formal agreement with the grantees, and so we'll list their partners as well. And yeah, the informal, there's lots and lots of people that are involved, and it's more of the one-offs or folks we don't have agreements with. But I guess we don't have always agreements with people that have agreements with our grantees. That's the one that's a little not sure about. Maybe that one's for future reporting, something that's not actually a partner of ours. But that's how we've done it in the past.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing, Amanda. Okay, would somebody else like to share? You can raise your hand. I'm assuming Candy and Dan, your hands are raised, but you don't mean them to be raised, right? Because I think you left them up. But would someone else like to share? Liz wants to share.
Yeah, I just thought I'd give a little bit of perspective of the numbers of these, counting these informal and formal partners over the past years and how they're reflected on our by the numbers annual report that we use, that we base off of the data that you send us. So in 2015, for example, there were about 1,500 formal partners identified. In the past, I guess last year and maybe 2020, 2019, there were about 2,500. So just over about 5 years, you guys have been recording at least 1,000 more formal partners in all of your kind of across the country and the NHA networks. Informal partners are about double that. So around 5,000 have been reported at least last year and the couple years before that. So just to, yeah, thanks Katie for the link there. You can see what the latest was from 2020, but just thought I'd show, I mean, I think that's just proof of like how you're able to connect you to your community and how your successes relate to the partnerships that you have at that local level, as well as kind of your partnership with the Park Service to help with financial and technical assistance. So I thought that'd be, I don't know, a nice tidbit to know kind of how those numbers have grown over the years. You can check that out.
Liz, while you're on, there was a question that popped up that you might answer, which was, do you consider volunteer agreements as formal or informal partners? Or Katie, if you would like to chirp in on this, but since Liz was on.
Yeah. As I read this, I would see volunteer being with an individual person, is what I'm assuming. And since we have another section on the data collection that asks about volunteer numbers, I would keep that under that section. But if it's an organization, then maybe that's where it's a little more gray, as you can count it in the partner section. Katie, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think the same, because otherwise you'd be kind of double counting the volunteers, and the value of those volunteers is huge. I mean, the value of these formals and informal partnerships is also huge, but there's a difference between an organizational partner and a person, and that person, we count them as volunteer, and then we count that their work as a value as well. Whereas like these formal and informal partners might be, as some have mentioned, contributing in-kind resources, which then are in your match and leverage. So they're kind of different categories, I guess, is what I would say.
Okay, and there was another question that popped up in the chat for that I think is interesting to talk about. So for board members, are they considered partners as individuals, or do you consider the whole organization as a formal partner?
I guess actually, now that when I was talking about this, I was thinking of Dan's comment from Hudson. I mean, I think what he was saying is these groups are represented on his board as a state entity. So it's the board member who's representing these formal organizations, partners, state agencies, collaborative organizations. And the board members themselves, if they're not getting any kind of reimbursement, they're volunteers, and they can, as we've talked about with, if a board member is giving legal advice to a nonprofit as a board member, that in-kind contribution is equated at their billable hour as a lawyer. Whereas if a lawyer is sweeping leaves, they're counted as like your standard volunteer hour. But if someone's giving you their professional experience and professional advice as a fiduciary kind of board member overseeing a nonprofit, they're valued at their professional contribution. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And you can always, we've talked about like if people are coming a long distance to a board meeting, their time coming to the meeting can be equated with as a cost too. You know, now with Zoom and things like that, we are able to get a quorum, if you will, without being in person. But certainly heritage areas are big, and to get meetings and get things to move forward and agreements to happen, you often need all those board members to travel great distances, and there's value to that.
Yes, Zoom has definitely cut into my mileage for in kind. I will definitely, there's many advantages to Zoom, but the downside is when there's a steering council meeting, I'm not getting the mileage from people coming 3+ hours away. So I get that. Darn. Oh, well.
Maybe there's other efficiencies.
Karis, it's much easier to track them all and have an accountability by printing out an income, like an income form, and then the Zoom meeting roster. It's much more efficient on my time. Okay, moving on. We're not here to talk about it.
Yeah, but in that sense though, too, your board members reading, preparing, reviewing grants, if that's a thing that you have board members or steering committee members do, when you're asking people to do work on your behalf, they're doing work on your behalf, and that time matters.
Yeah. So going back to the whole conversation of formal and informal partners, I think a lot of what people have shared is that formal partners often do have written agreements. I do know, and Mackenzie from Aviation National Heritage could not be on the call today, but she had said that her formal partners are actually in their bylaws. Like it's already outlined for them who like are their formal partners. And I thought that was unique. Definitely every heritage area does this a little bit differently on what we count and what we don't count. So, all right, who else would like to share? I know there's some other people on the call that haven't shared. Would any of them like to?
I'm Diane Timberlake with Blue Ridge National Heritage Area, and I'm very much in listening mode. This is my second time experiencing annual report. First time, I think I had been on the job for about 7 days. So definitely a big learning curve. So I'm appreciating everything that I'm hearing from everyone on the call. Thank you.
Well, welcome. This is one way to hear from your colleagues, but you know, everyone in this group is here for you as a resource. And that's one of the benefits of this network. So we're your formal partner and your informal friend.
Yeah, Katie is right. When I first started working heritage areas, which is closing in on, it's over a decade now, I would bug people and I'd be like, hi, I'm from this heritage area. Can I borrow this? Or like, So do think about that too. That's actually the reason this call got started in the first place, was because we have unique jobs that are very different based on different legislation, but we do have similarities, and those similarities are a great way to get ideas and brainstorm off of each other. All right, so back to formal and informal partners, and I'm not going to keep belaying this. So if because this is December, and I'm sure everybody's got lots of stuff to do before we break for the holidays this next week. So does anybody else have something that they would like to share connected to formal or informal? And it can be a question. It doesn't have to be, this is what we do. If you have a question and you're one of the newer heritage areas, or you're new to heritage area work and you have a question about this, we've got Liz and Katie on the call. I feel like between the two of them and some of the older heritage areas, we could probably handle some questions. So I'll let you guys think on that for a second. Ooh, Jen has a question or a comment or would like to contribute. I don't know, but Jen, take it away.
Well, actually, my question is more about the reports themselves. The part 1 and part 2, are they going to be the same as they've been in the past few years? And is there a due date that has been set for these?
Yeah, Jen, I can send you an email about that. They're due January 28th. I sent it out just after Thanksgiving, so it makes me wonder if you're not on the list.
Yeah, I was thinking I must have missed something. I'll go back in my
Okay.
email, but that doesn't sound familiar. I was also out that week, so.
Okay, I'll resend it to you, no problem. Yes, there are new forms this year. So if you recall, over the past couple years, we were trying to get approval from the Office of Management and Budget on the information collection aspect of us. The heritage area is being identified as the public, meaning outside of the federal government, reporting to the federal government. It's seen as information collection. So we had to go through an approval process to get the forms approved. The forms were approved in April. And so now with that approval comes this certain template and this certain form that we have to use. All the questions are the same. So we're asking you just to report on the same data. It's just that the forms look different and you have to use these new forms this year going forward. So I'll send you that and I'll send you the other, the email I sent with more instruction. Okay.
All right, other questions or thoughts on formal and informal partners, or, you know, the final report that is due in a little over a month? Okay, then I would like to wish everybody a happy holiday. And Katie, would you mind giving everybody a preview of what the January call is going to be about? Because it's actually a pretty exciting topic.
Sorry, my unmute button. So we are having. Uh-oh, hold on. Sorry. You're hearing Liz in my background. Okay. Technology. Okay, so two things. One, Liz had a training last week about the new forms, Jen, and that is now on YouTube. So I was going to get the link for that to put it in the chat, and that's why you guys are hearing Liz talk at my house. On the other front, we are having a special conversation on interpreting social justice and interpreting kind of topics related to equity and diversity and inclusion, and how the Park Service faces some of those topics at sites of conscious or sites with Confederate monuments, or all of those kind of conversations that we've started having in 2020, and we want to continue having those. But this will be a special conversation from the Southeast region. Some of the interpretive staff there have put together some tools and some web links and videos and various content that they'll walk you through and share. That is happening. Let me grab my calendar real quick. Pardon me while I pull up my calendar. At the end of January, I think it's the 24th.
27th.
27th, thank you. So we'll be sending out an invitation about that shortly. I was actually just talking to Stephanie in the Southeast region today about that content and really how to share that story. And then kind of as a follow-up to that, in February, we're going to have a presentation from the Sites of Consciousness network that has worked with Niagara Falls on the Underground Railroad Cultural Center, has done some training with Rivers of Steel, I believe some work with Gullah Geechee and some other heritage areas. So they're going to present kind of the work that they've done with heritage areas and the Park Service more generally. And then you'll hear from some of your heritage areas colleagues on how they've used that network to benefit their interpretation and sites. And I think it'll be a really fruitful conversation going forward into 2022. So hope you can join us then.
Yeah, and it looks like Amanda has raised her hand. So Amanda, was there something you wanted to share or ask a question?
Yeah, I was just curious if the best practice or annual reporting webinar that was, I think, last week, if that's online yet or not.
Yeah, Katie just posted it on, she's going to be putting a link in the chat, I believe, right, Katie? Posted it on the YouTube channel. So, and Katie just posted a link to it in the chat for this. So if you would like to watch it live, you can. Katie, not Katie, Liz did a great job going through the report and talking about what to put in each section and answering questions that people had. So it's a great resource for you to watch at your own time, or if you go back to later, if you have a specific question about a specific section. She literally walked through every section of the report and then talked about what to do where. So it was very, very helpful.
And
Awesome.
there are
Thank
two
you so
parts.
much.
There are two parts to the video because the Zoom for government dropped in the middle. And so
It did.
we had a reboot. We keep on keeping on. So there are two parts to that. And the link that I sent is the general link to all the 2021 best practices. When I was trying to send the specific link to that video, it started playing the video. And so I didn't specifically send the exact link, but it's a link to the playlist from 2021.
So thank you all so much. This has been a great year of best practices calls. We've done a lot of stuff, and I'm excited for next year. And everybody have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you in 2022.